like so proud of him because like he pulled the trigger, and I'm like, it's the stuff that like we've always wanted to do, but just no one got a chance to do it. So
yeah, man. Honestly, when we used to do that, kind of talking around the hookah and stuff, I was like, man, like we should start recording this. And I know you said one of them did, right? One of your guys' friends.
Yeah, Mike. He had a two-way mic system, and then we do it at Randy's kitchen, and then most of the time it's because we would go in the house because like the garage was just too cold, so we'd go inside. But yeah, the conversation started in the garage, and the first one that he recorded was it was him, so Mike, Randy, Terry, me, and some other guys, and we just started talking about. I think at the time the conversation was like, what cars could be represented by women, like at the time, like, so everyone's like, just pick a car, and then you got to pick someone that we all know would represent that car. So I think someone right off the bat came out with like Dodge Magnum, and they're like Kim Kardashian. And really? They're like, yeah, that thing has just got ass for days. So, and then someone else brought up Aston Martin Vulcan. So they're like, yeah, that's like Margot Robbie. And they're like a psycho, but like you kind of want to have her, but you don't want to take her home, like because at the time Jeremy Clarkson had done the Top Gear review where they were doing the track testing when they kind of, I think it was at the back end of Top Gear. I don't know if it was Top Gear or when they were at what is it called, the Grand Tour, but he got to test it, and there's that dial on the steering wheel that you can just dial up the horsepower, and he's like, so this is nice, and then psycho.
Just crank it up.
Yeah, it was like 700 horsepower. So
damn.
And then for me, I remember vividly, I was like E36 M3, and they're like, who's that? I'm like, that's Shakira, dude. I'm like, not a lot of people can move hips like her, dude. So
that's true.
Yeah. At the time, it was like I was so gung ho about getting. I was so into carbon at the time, and I'd seen the E46 with the carbon trunk lid, so I love that dovetail, And then a friend of mine at work, he's like, they have bigger cars, like they have a 4-door, but it's an M5, and I was like, what's an M5? So I think it was like 2005 or 6 when I started kind of. I'd been a car guy before that, but I had no idea how to work on any of the European cars. So then I just started looking into it, and then it was a 4-door. So I had requirements because I needed to have a back seat with the capability of putting like a baby, seat. And then I was like, it has to be a V8, and then it has to be a manual. So it just kind of fit the bill. Like it was such a weird thing to find everything in one, just in one car. And then I waited, and I fell in love with Le Mans. Le Mans blue was like, I had to have it. So
that's a beautiful blue.
I know. Yeah. It's just so.
That's one of the things. Like I'm glad you mentioned was that your car. Is it basically your daily?
Yeah, every day. I've had it since.
That's awesome.
It's like 7 years. It's
like you've had it a long time.
Yeah, it's a rolling museum of like. I'm a curator is basically what it is, because every day I'm like, okay. I actually compare this one, just like how we were talking about women earlier. This one's Lindsey Vonn, because it's like that. She's that professional. Olympic, slalom.
For skiing?
For skiing, yeah.
Okay.
Because she's not young. She needs like surgery now and then, like a couple knee surgery, little work, but don't rule that person out of, contention with other.
She's got some quads, man.
She's got quads. So, yeah, that's been my daily. I've worked on everything. I think I know the chassis like 95%. Yeah. I mean, aside from switching piston rings, like I'm pretty up there. My brother and I have done everything. He's a master tech, but I'm coming up on chain guides. So
wow.
yeah, chain guides at 200,000 is kind of like a ticking time bomb. But it also depends on how someone took care of it.
How many miles do you have on it now? Or
200,000 miles.
200,000 miles.
Do you have any
wow.
major issues with it?
Well, no, I got it. Public announcement: never buy a car from Florida, sight unseen. So, because that's like the stupidest thing to do. Although the cheapest cars come from Florida, sight unseen. So, when I got it, the funniest thing was that the check engine light, they had covered it with electrical tape.
Oh my
So
gosh.
when I went to go register it at the DMV, they're like, yeah, no, try again, because there's a lot of fuel issues and stuff like that. So, and that was, I don't know, 2013, probably. So then eventually, that's the first time I took it to a shop, and they're like, yeah, here's $4,000 of, you have to do all these things. So fuel pump, there's just so many things, like all this Siemens sensors, switch those out for like Bosch. And then that's when I had to start getting smart about, well, what can I do by myself? And oddly enough, like that car is pretty much, I call it the last hot rod that BMW ever made, because it has like Windows 95 on it. Like it's not that hard to work on. Everything is kind of analog. There's not a lot of digital stuff. And everything could be done with a 10 millimeter socket, a 17 millimeter socket, a couple torques, and just some basic knowledge. I mean, it's really not that hard. The only thing is I don't have tiny hands, so there's no clearance, you know. So
Yeah.
and I have a lot of like singe. Like I singe myself all the time, like because when you're going up,
Yeah.
and like the manifold is there, and
It's hot.
you know, just even like changing oil of any kind of liquid, or you know, whether it's power steering or I'm like, I need to wear like
Gloves, long
Yeah.
gloves.
oven gloves and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's it's not easy to work on because of the clearances, but everything is so documented. You know, there's like 15 years of forums of people like, that code means this, or you know, no, that's a false positive. Don't worry about that. Worry about this. And it's just, you know, it's you have a lot of support. People are in love with that chassis, and you know, you just dive in. It'll take a while, but
Yeah.
you shouldn't be afraid of it. But
Yeah, it's I remember, I think it was Randy told me when he was telling me about you and your car, when he said, he's like, yeah, so basically it's this M5, it's manual, it's got a V8, and he says, and he built it so he could drive it to New York and come right back. And I was
Yeah.
like, wow, an E39? I was like, damn, that's sick, man. So it's super rare to meet somebody that has a badass car that they freaking drive. Like, you're one of the few people that I know that actually does that, and I'm guilty of, Josh knows, like, I haven't done that.
right.
So that's freaking awesome, man. I mean, 200,000 miles in that car, it still looks great, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't baby it. And when you have good parts and like you have confidence that it was done right, you can lay into it. Like you really can. I never understood, like, you know, when car review people would be like, oh, it's so rewarding after you know, load up the suspension, or you put, you know, a couple laps on it and then you get comfortable. So it is heavy, but it acts like a kid. Like once you get into like 70, 80 miles an hour, it's real nimble. So it's just kind of weird. It's like a fat pig when you're in traffic, and then all of a sudden it's like, let's go.
Really
why
wakes up.
are we slow? You know, and then you'll be like on the highway and it's like 120 is just like the cruising speed. I think is probably like 110, 115, where it is just humming on 8 cylinders.
Wow.
It'll, like, the most I've ever done with it is like 170 ish.
Damn, you got a 170?
Yeah, 170.
Holy crap.
It was full disclosure. It was on
This
Las
is
Vegas
Mexico,
Boulevard.
right?
No, yeah, right, outside the country.
Wait, Las Vegas Boulevard?
Yeah, it was on Las Vegas Boulevard.
How did you ring that?
Well, because Las Vegas Boulevard is so long, so it's between Henderson and Gene, Nevada.
It's like
so.
someone looks out the Bellagio and like, what's wrong with this Lino?
Yeah.
Check this from
No, it was such a thrill to, like, I only did it after I got tires because I knew that in case something did, I'd seen videos of people eating it on the Autobahn, and the chassis on that thing is just like a tank. It's not gonna bend. But it's the first time I got Pilot Super Sports. Like I was just like I had to do it, and then I had Bilstein suspension, so I had the P6 or P16. I forgot the denomination, but the crazy thing is when you get above like 150, 160, the amount of air rushing into the engine bay, there's like an eighth of an inch gap of like the hood and the fender, because it'll just start, compacting all of the air in there. So it's actually, now I understand why people have hood pins for like a legitimate reason, but I was not thinking that far. I was like, I'm not even going to get to that point. But in about 3 or 4 miles, you can let it rip. So it's not governed, which was kind of, I was expecting it to kick in at like 150. Nothing. It just kept going.
Where were you at? Like, in what gear were you at?
Sixth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Were you bringing it out, or?
Yeah, I didn't want to. Yeah, I think I did a rolling start like at 60, and 60 I was like in fourth, mid fourth, and then fifth is like one of its longest gears. Like sometimes in fifth I can pass people in fifth, and it's just, I don't like the gearing on that car. The low end, traffic wise, like I do like second gear pull out, because first is just like, it's like cranking like on a little mini bike. I'm just like, people are like, why aren't you going? I've had older people be like, go. And I'm like, dude, you don't realize in my first gear, especially like if you're in a situation where like you're on St. Rose all the time, people, I love telling my daughter this. I'm like, why do people rush to a red light? What is the fascination?
Yeah.
Like, you're going to get there and you're going to stop. So I'll pull out in second and then just roll through. And then I get there and then I'm like, I want to knock on their window. Like, was it worth it for you? Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
So
We're here at the same
but
time.
the gearing, I don't like. The first and second are just not. Fifth and sixth that's where it lives, like, on the highway. And it's really just a highway car, but yeah, good parts. It'll keep it going. Other than that, if you want to cheap out, you will have to replace stuff every 6-7 months. And that's the thing. Every part that it has from the factory has a factory life, and it'll give out. It'll give you a little subtle warning, but it'll eventually
go.
I feel like that's any car though. You cheap out and you get like a reman part, or even cheaper than that, and it'll just die. You don't know when. And people wonder why. I'm like, why didn't you just buy the good part?
Yeah, it's a ticking time bomb. But
Yeah.
it gets to a point where you have to make a decision. Like, okay, do I go OEM, or can I afford to not have to have something stamped with with BMW? So I think with some things you can do that, and then some it's like no.
It's no go.
Yeah, aesthetic stuff. But
What are your plans for the car? Are you gonna keep it indefinitely, or?
it's so weird today. I was having a convo with Randy because I told him I was going to come. And I'm at a crossroad where I have so much emotional attachment to it because it taught me, like, I'm a mechanical engineer by trade, but it taught me that I didn't know anything. Like the Germans had it all figured out, and then I just had to follow the blueprint. So it's to a point where I'm really being wooed by F80 M3s, the 20, I think it's 14 to 18 generation. That S55 that motor is just.
I think you were telling me about that engine, weren't you? The S55 engine?
I think all of the modern BMW engines, like once you hit M54 and 55 and up, like they get better and better and better. And now we're at the B58, and that thing is just a monster.
Yeah.
There is inline six twin turbo. Is that what they are?
The 55, I actually know that it's twin turbo. I don't know all the configurations. I think it might just be a small V6. It's a 3. It's a 3 liter, but there are always like major faults. Like I've done the research, and like the crank hub is like a ticking time bomb if you don't get that done, because it was a 3-piece crank hub from BMW, and 2 or 3 years after it went out, like shops started manufacturing single piece, just a solid 1-piece crank hub with all the sprockets on it and stuff. So I don't know why BMW designed it that way, and then they corrected it in the year after, or the generation after. So people were salty about it, but I think that's why it's a value right now, because some people are like, okay, has it been done? Has it been corrected? If you're buying one, and if it hasn't, they're like, it's a hassle. I'm gonna have to go deal with that. So, but what got me was the tuning that could be done.
Just BMW.
Just without one wrench, like nothing. It's just like OBD2, drop
Flash
it in
it, yeah.
and flash it. So
Yeah, it's nuts. He sent me a M2 with what was a downpipe and a tune or something, and it made like 700
700 horsepower.
like
to the wheels.
That's insane.
Yeah. And then you start adding a little bit more bolt-ons, and it just gets more and more outrageous.
Yeah. So factory turbos, upgrading that. Anyone, typically like 10 years ago, that would be a huge, upgrade turbos, then you have to do the tune, but then you have to do everything downward, right? Everything, like downstream. Now it's like, no, just plug it and then flash and let's go.
Crazy.
I've seen them do it like in Target parking lots where I'm like, dude, you got to go back to the dyno. They're like, no, just plug and play. So it's been.
Well, it's a lot of cars
advanced.
now come with turbos versus like 10, 15 years ago. Everyone was like $5,000 turbo kit, and then you have to do all the sporting mods.
Yeah.
And it adds up.
No. The efficiency's been there. The moment when I was at SEMA and I saw the Supra for the first time, this last gen, and the only reason I went to go see it was because of the motor. I'm like, I want to see if this BMW motor is gonna last. And
It's proven itself.
I've never heard anyone say it's detonated. Like, it's just
Everyone
so
just talk. I can't believe how many people talk smack about that car and the engine still, but they have no idea
the potential of that. Yeah, I super wise. Yeah, I respect all GDM. I have a fascination with R34s. I love NSXs, but all that car proved was that a manufacturer could outsource a block, make it reliable, and prove that not all BMWs are designed to fail at a certain point. So I have a lot of respect for it, but the design of the actual carriage is just not my cup of tea. With a good wide body kit, so good. From the factory, I'm like, why did you half-ass it? Like, I look at BRZs, I look at cars that had so much potential, but then I'm like, why did you skimp out on, and I get it, the platform itself has to be reliable, and it has to, one thing is concept sketch, and then one thing is for a consumer. But when you go to SEMA, you see all the good stuff, like after everyone got a hold of it, and then you look at the factory and you're like disappointed.
Yeah.
It's just, inevitable.
You remember they had that FT1 concept initially,
Yeah.
and we thought that was going to be the Supra, and like that was a banging looking car. I was like, damn, that thing looks like cooler than an LFA. And I was really kind of disappointed that that didn't come to fruition. But I totally agree with you, because working at Toyota, I'd see these Supras from time to time, and I'd see stock ones, and I'm like, something's just off about that car.
Yeah.
But then I'd see some with the wheels. They got them different
Offset.
quarter panels.
Yeah.
It's lowered. It's got the wing, and I'm like, that
Whoa.
is a sexy ass car.
It's just, it totally changes the personality of the car. And I get it. Not everyone's gonna want to put that much work into it, and some would be like, there's purists, and then there's like psychos that put 3-foot wings in the back. Yeah, I'm just like, it's so weird. If I were to classify all the cars that I've had, we talk about the past, but I like subtle sleeper,
Yeah.
enough to confuse a guy at a gas station, but to have a kid be like, "What is that?" You know, and those are like with the M5. One of the weirdest interactions I had was in traffic at a red light. This biker came up behind me, and he's like, "I never thought Germans could sound like that." And I'm like, "No, it's an 8-cylinder." He's like, "No way." And we pulled into like a, Walmart parking lot. He's like, "I gotta see this," and he's like, "No." And we talked about him being over there overseas, being in the military, and he's like, "I never knew that they had that." So, you never know who you kind of run into, but I didn't like anything that screamed like, "Look at me," or, but enough for someone that did know about cars to be like, "Where are you going?" Like, "Whoa, let's talk about this." So, that's what I liked about cars. That you don't have to scream, "Look,"
Sure.
but enough to catch someone's attention. Like,
If you know, you know.
Yeah, if you know, you know.
Well, you're gonna want to know what he's building now.
Mine's the exact opposite.
Like, look at me.
Literally, I have the 350Z,
Okay.
K24 swap.
Ooh, already.
Yeah, I'm doing a big turbo on it, so trying to make
Okay.
600 wheel. I'm doing a giant 72-inch wing that comes out of the hatch. Like it's chassis mounted, and it literally has to be cut out of the hatch.
Yeah. You need to mount that.
Yeah, it's a wide body. I have 19 by 12.5 negative 40 offset wheels. So like
Just the offset itself is.
yeah, it's like a 6-inch lift in the rear.
Okay.
Just obnoxious in every way you can think of. Not that I'm screaming for attention.
No,
it's just the obnoxiousness.
What was your motivation? Like, what's one thing that like you said I want that because of? Like, what was the subliminal motivation?
Well, so my prior builds were all just, I don't know, it's just those random styles of things that I liked, and I was like, I just like different. Like everyone didn't like underglow at one point, and I was like, I like underglow. Like it's just something different.
Okay.
But now for this car, part of my motivation along with the obnoxiousness is actually time attack builds.
Oh, okay.
Because of their obnoxious aero, like they have the biggest wings and the most obnoxious diffusers, like stupid aero.
Canards everywhere.
Yeah, and I mean, it's probably not going to see it track that much, and it's not going to be a real race car, but that's kind of where the thoughts came from.
When was the first time you saw one that you're like, or was there like a Mona Lisa that you thought you're like, I want to emulate that, or?
I don't think there's anything that I'm like, I want to emulate. I think it's just the overall style, but for some reason when I think of like a controversial time attack car, I don't actually know I forgot who the race car driver is, but it was like an '04 Scion TC, and they had like a huge wing on the back, but it almost looked like they took the same wing and put it on the front.
Oh, like a.
And
like
I'm sure we
Like
can.
a hill climb?
Yeah, like a Pikes Peak build.
Yeah, it looked almost like that, but it was definitely a time attack calling it, and it's just I don't know, something about it just being overly.
Because for aero to me is like Pikes Peak stuff, where they need that just down
fall off the mountain.
The video, I think the legendary video is that. What is it? What was it? Evo? Was it one of the Evos that just flew off?
Yes,
rolled off.
and he lived. That roll
lived.
cage was. They said it was one of the best designed roll cages.
Whoever welded that manually,
I know.
Jeez,
do
it
that
was like-
again. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's cool about his build is like, although it is got these unique, extravagant like flavors on it, like he's building the car to back it up. Like
Ground
having
up.
a light car, and his car is gutted. Like he's got like carbon fiber door cards in it or something. Like
Oh, the actual doors are carbon fiber,
Okay.
so you can actually see through it. There's no. The hatch
Like
is
exposed carbon complete. Okay.
Yeah, the hatch is carbon. The wide body is fiberglass, and then at one point it had carbon bumpers in the hood, but I took those off right now.
Okay.
But I mean, all the sound deadening's removed. Like,
Yeah, I mean, this is a beer can
Yeah.
with the motor.
yeah,
Yeah,
pretty
exactly.
much.
So I think that's cool. You know, he's building a car that kind of matches its
It
extravagance.
screams in its appearance, but then it doesn't move. It'll move.
Well, yeah, with that motor, yeah.
Nuts.
The big single, the fascination with twins for a while, and then moving to big singles, it's like, and I've seen that with with the F80 M3. People are like, just knock out the twins and put a big single, and you know.
Well, that's most cars. Even the super guys are doing it now. But I think if you want to make power, like that's just the way you have to go.
Yeah. Well, I think the like 10 years ago, or it's so weird because you look at the trends back then, and I don't know who it was that has the podcast. Not Ed Harris, but someone said like if you look at the 90s to 2000s, like 300 horsepower was a lot. Like when you broke the sound barrier of like 300 horsepower, the vet guys were finally creeping up, and then the 500, the 4 to 500 horsepower wars. I think that's the part that took the longest. But now, the 5 to 600 is like
the minimum.
Any AMG has like 600 horsepower. The only thing I think that's happened is it's detached. Like you don't have fear of 600 horsepower anymore because of DCT, all the dynamic electronics. Where I'm like, if you knew you could die, you wouldn't want 600 horsepower. Yeah. And that's why this car, for me, reminds me of how great it is to be alive. Like, don't push it, because when you find the edge of where you're going to fall off, you don't go back. But this one will teach you. Like, it teaches you respect of, I think from the factory, they were definitely downrated. Because conservatively, even just with tuning, just a full-on flash from 2004. Because a lot of the software is from 99 to 2001, but if you get that first, Evolve Tuning does a great job with giving you a modern day computer. Just with that, I think 400 to the wheel, or like between 4 and 410, and that means it's got to be, you're losing like 15-20% in the drivetrain, but BMW totally snuck in that motor without telling too many people about it. And I think it was a love song and a love letter, because after that, the E60 just, it overshadowed it so much. But then the V10,
it's not that great.
So sound-wise, I had to do exhaust delete. Like, I had to do everything. Just cut it out. And that's what makes it the purest. I've learned to know what range it screams. Like, I'll be on the highway, and a friend of mine's like, I think I can hear you a mile away. Like, it's that, a friend of mine, Mike, he's like, I think I can hear you a mile away. But then in a neighborhood, you just have to learn how to keep it under 1,000 RPM and just like cruise on.
Flying under the radar, yeah.
But yeah, I've heard V10, that E60 M5. I gotta say it's probably the best naturally aspirated motor I've ever heard. But what's what's one car that you like sound wise?
LFA, Lexus.
The
sure.
LFA?
Which is a V10, but God, that is just the
What's it remind you of? Like,
I don't know what I could say it reminds me of. It's just, that is like the best sounding car ever.
Isn't it tuned by Yamaha? Like, it's just like a symphony.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great sounding car.
I actually think it is.
Yeah.
No,
it might be the best, yeah. Maybe.
I think second to that for me would probably like a Murcielago, like a SV, like that V12. You can't beat it. Yeah,
the when it first started coming out on YouTube of like people, just spitting flames out, and I think that V12, the generations of all the, I think even from like '01 to now, any Lambo is like, if you're not making it do obnoxious things, why did you get a Lambo?
Seriously.
Yeah.
But the one what's the one that shares the chassis or this with like the R8, the audio?
The
Huracan. Yeah. I think those are the ones that I've seen where they're just basically now $125,000, $150,000 cars where it's like, what do you want to do? It's such a, but that sound of the LFA, the first time and the only time I'd ever heard one was at SEMA. They had a really beautiful, it's like a champagne silver or like I don't know, it's just like
it's like dusted gold.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even know how to explain it. I've never seen a car with that color. I mean, I've seen some Chip Foose cars that have like super candy, beautiful paint, but that LFA from the factory, you're right. I've never heard that before. I don't think I'll ever heard it. It's like trumpety to me. It's like this little like symphony of little people inside of a motor just like.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt your ears. It's
No.
not like there's not like this. I don't know. I can't even talk about audio, but like the sound waves are like nothing's
The
disrupted.
acoustics.
Yeah, it just doesn't hurt your ears to hear. Like,
I'm just surprised they didn't go with it and say like LFA 2.0 or.
I think it's coming.
You think so?
Another
Yeah.
one.
I think Lexus is supposed to come out with something new, and I think Toyota is like they just come out every so often and like, here, we'll make something just to prove we're still in the game, but we don't really want to be here.
Yeah.
They're like, we're making head over heels money that we just have to look like we are struggling to compete with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the halo car of LFA. What I didn't like is that they didn't take enthusiasts. Why didn't you make something more affordable?
Like GTR.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they put all this effort into it, and it was just like here, fine, we could do it. But then I'm like, no, you have an audience. The reason I don't really, I can't tell you right now that I'd want an AMG car for one very specific reason. Name one AMG with a manual transmission. Just one. I've never seen one, never will, and that's not their motto. It's not their mojo.
No.
But I'm thinking like, do you know how many Aston Martins have been converted to manual because people were like, why don't you give us this? So it's the same with what's it called? Not Toyota, Lexus. Yeah, where I'm like, you have such a huge base of customers. Why don't you give them what they want? It almost feels like they clutch back because they're like, nah, if we do that, we're sellouts.
Right.
I'm like,
Yeah.
why would you not give people manual?
I think they did it eventually with like the Supra because it only came with a dual clutch, and then eventually they're like, oh, here's a 4-cylinder with a manual, and then people still were like, no, literally give us a B58 with a manual. And it finally came, but it just took, I don't even know how many years at this point.
Yeah. DCTs are pretty much, PDKs.
Mm-hmm.
When the PDK came out, for whatever reason, everybody was so fascinated with the Nuremberg ring times and like, oh wow, the PDK, like the GT3s, all of them were like 45 seconds quicker. But then, even though I respect it as an engineer, like it's a super efficient system, like a twin clutch PDK. I'm like, who cares? Like I'm not in it to who's gonna get back to the grocery store in record time? Like, who cares?
I got home 45 seconds faster.
Yeah. Hurry up, Rob.
That's one thing I really respect about Porsche above almost any other company is like they, I think in my opinion, have some of the best built cars, but at the same time, like they're still on that pursuit of making unbelievable driving cars that are manual, that are naturally aspirated still. And it's really a shame. Like Ferrari, Lamborghini, AMG, BMW's kind of phasing out. They have a couple you can get, but like Porsche is kind of the last stand. That's like, wait a minute, we're not letting this go.
Nope.
And I was gonna mention kind of segue. I know we kind of talked about Porsche for you, but I think that can be your next.
It is.
GT3 would be a good car for you.
Yeah, that the thing now that I'm realizing that. Especially after you cross into a certain frontier, you went from American muscle, which I have a huge soft spot for, and then finally delved into European cars where I'm like, this was 20 years ahead of its time, and that's why it's expensive to maintain. But now the dynamics of a 911 chassis are. I think it's so weird. I think it's the greatest value supercar you can get because, you could spend the threshold of 200 and up and 200 and below. That's I think that's where it separates, psychotic supercars and then subtle. Even I think the R8 was kind of on the edge. And then they did a V10 R8.
Well, even now you can still get like a V10, even the newer gen.
This chair's about to blow the head gas.
It's like
if you fall over, it'll go viral.
Seriously.
So you want the metal one? Okay, we'll see what happens.
We'll play it out. But that one started to give people problems too.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, like
Okay.
there's a lot of videos where I think when you start messing with that amount of power for that chassis, it has its limits, right? But the R8 versus the Huracan, when people started, I don't know, just doing entire YouTube channels based on that car, I noticed that the R8s took a backseat, and it's sad because it's pretty much the same. Like they're really the same.
Yeah.
But I never saw anyone really get the full potential of that car. So what I liked about the 911 chassis is when I finally drove and I understood where I'm like, you are being pushed versus pulled, like there's a whole different there's a whole different sensation. But when you drove when you drove for a living, when you first got into it, what did you think? Or
yeah, so honestly, I was really following what you're saying about the Huracan. To me, like a Huracan is not even a Lamborghini.
No.
Like a Lamborghini is an event. It's like holy crap. And when I see a Aventador pass by my work or something every now and then, like that sound is like you don't hear that sound in
anywhere
anything else.
No.
And for me, that's like the point. Should be the point of a Lamborghini. It's like you don't hear that sound in an Audi. You don't have parts kind of mix match, like little chimes that are in Volkswagens or anything like that. So although I spent a lot of time in the Huracans and like they're obviously great cars, personally I would never get one. And I think the previous gen V8 and V10 R8s were like awesome cars.
Yeah.
And they did not get enough respect.
Yeah.
And I think right now that's like one of the top bargains, like entry level sort of exotics right now. You see some of these V10 R8s,
low hundreds,
manual. They're like almost like $100,000, maybe just shy of 100. It's like that's insane to me. So yeah, I'm spot on, with that. And a lot of these celebrities, they are pro athletes. They pick up these Huracans, and then other people want them because they have them. But
it's such a bandwagon.
Perpetual bandwagon, exactly. But to me, if you ask me, the old Diablos, Countaches, like those were real Lamborghinis. The Aventadors are real Lamborghinis.
It's just a pantomime. Like you're riding you have to be an absurd person. So I think like that's all up in your alley. Like if you want to really, I parked next to Performante today. I went to get something from the store, and it was a convertible, and I had that forged pressed carbon wing and all the subtle. I think in the sun it looks really good. Like that carbon, obviously, is way better looking than like a weaved carbon.
Yeah.
But the thing was, I looked at it and I was like, it doesn't. I don't know. It just doesn't have that pantomime. That oh my God, look at that, like that kid inside of me. But an Aventador, anything like that, that's just like, that's stupid. Yeah. Like, no one should ever be allowed to design that. Like a kid was allowed to just go nuts.
I still remember the first time when I was a kid I saw a Lamborghini in person. You know where the Colonnade used to be on Eastern? That theater?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Literally, I was like, I don't know how old I was. Whenever the Murcielago was, maybe I was 12 or 11, 10, or I can't remember.
Right.
But I remember it was orange. My dad, we were going to see a movie. We pull into the parking lot, and I just see this freaking massive tires, like
huge,
these big like hips on this car. And I'm like, and the pipes, those two pipes that come out like
they
that.
They were shooting at like 40 degrees, like.
I was like, oh my gosh, like what? I was like, that is something special, And like like you said, you could park next to a Huracan. It's like, oh.
Great.
What's the big deal, So it's definitely changed, with those cars for sure.
Yeah, the emotion it invokes, the feeling of like childhood.
Yeah.
Today I was on St. Rose and I was telling Randy this, that Unfortunately, I didn't line up with it because I was turning left, but it's actually probably within your area. It was in white R33 GTR.
Nice.
And he was brake boosting at the light because I could hear him already spooling.
Damn.
And I'm like, dude, I'm turning left. But there was an F-250 next to him, a turbo diesel. And I think he'd already been messing with them along the stretch of road. But I'd never seen a car quietly squirm and just weave through, fresh asphalt. 'Cause he went over the median or the intersection, and I could see it hook.
Damn.
But it was so quiet. Like you could hear it spool, but he didn't have a loud, obnoxious exhaust. He was just. It almost looked like a factory car that had some really nice tuning because that thing was just hooking. So that kid in me was like, yeah, dude, that's something. I'd want to pull that guy over and be like, I just want to see.
Yeah.
But versus, an exotic now that we've kind of been numb to it. And me going, year after year to SEMA, there's not a lot of things that I'm like, okay, cool. But the LFA did that to me. Even though it's not like super in your face, it's the subtle things that, And the last time a car did that to me was Pagani when they had that blue carbon, exposed carbon Pagani, and even like the luggage or whatever was because they had like a compartment in the back for like luggage, and they had the clamshell open in the back, and I'm like, everything looked like a jewel. It's the first time I'd seen a car where I was like, it was in the Pirelli booth, but that blue just got to me. And it's one of the first times I'd ever felt, again, like you said, like watching a Countach for the first time.
Yeah.
I was like, I want that poster in my room.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's funny because I was having this thought the other day. I was like, why is it that there are less cars that I'm so crazy about? And I'm like, is it me? And I'm like, no, I still freaking love cars. I'm crazy about cars. And I'm like, you know what I think it is? I think it's the cars that are being made now. Like, before, like, if you wanted to go fast, you had to buy a sports car. But now, you could buy an SUV. You could buy a sedan.
Seriously.
You could buy, a freaking electric car, whatever. And I think these cars of the passion and, like, just the emotion, like you said, like that event, I think we're going to start looking back.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be less common that a new car will come out and you're just going to go crazy. I don't think that's going to happen as much,
I think it's being able to control something that few can. So it's having something that not everyone knows how to use, and something that is, I don't know, in your face more, more raw. A beer can with with the motor. Like there's a difference between having something so packaged and protected, and I see it a lot with kids nowadays, where they get into WRX and they're like, I'm invincible. I'm like, no, you have a lot of computers keeping you alive. If you really wanted to try your luck, why don't you start from the bottom and see if you have that talent. So yeah, it's synthetic, that feeling of invincibility where you're like, nothing's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And when you start looking at cars, like the first car, believe it or not, that as a kid that got my attention, I know it's kind of the origin of my car fanaticism, was a 1989 Firebird, Trans Am, Michael Knight Rider, and when I saw the show as a kid, I was in love with it. But the first time I saw one in real life, the guy comes out of it. And just the larger than life moment where, I just went up to him and I was like, dude, how did you get this car? And he's like, just gotta work hard. That's it. So that, like, the bug stuck.
Wow.
And I just remember the color was black, but he had the factory, look. He didn't have like the look for the show or the black rims and all that. But I still believe that was one of the most beautiful cars of its time. It's still a Pontiac, right? I mean, it's not gonna have obnoxious amounts of power, but to me it was the emotion. And then after that, that's when I got into what I call the Shelby era. You know, once I was a teenager and I started understanding more of the heritage of Ford and like the pissing match of a competition he had with Ferrari. And then they made the movie, which I was like, yeah, I've been waiting my whole life for that. It's okay. I've already known this forever. But all of what came out of that, I loved. It's two men that were just like, I'm gonna prove it. And as a result, some of the most beautiful machines came out. And, you know, those again are not, I have a huge soft spot for the Mustang. My unicorn car will still be a 1967 Shelby GT500. Like, that to me is the pinnacle, right? But will it be the fastest? No. Is it going to be the most, advanced, proficient? No. I just wanted to be the most analog car that when people get to enjoy it or see it with me, just to be like, that's what a car used to be versus a computer with four wheels. You know, like it's got no traction control. Like, there's no digital fuel management systems. Like, none of that. Like, you got to get a screwdriver and like really tune it until, you know. And of course, having enough comforts to be able to road trip, but just keeping it raw.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if there's any more modern cars like that, but
it's pretty few and far between. For sure, yeah. I can't think of one to be honest.
Yeah, that's
coming
why.
out now. That's pretty bare bones. You know,
to have like no, driver aids. So I think there's got to be a cutoff, a year where cars eventually just became dominated by 5 or 6 computers.
It's probably like 2010, because I know there's 350Zs, for instance. If you got, I don't know what the trims were, but mine didn't come with traction control.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Mm-hmm.
Are you serious? That's
Yeah.
great.
I would never expected that. Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of them didn't. And I don't know if there's other cars like that, but I'm sure that's probably when it starts to just pause.
The beginning of the end.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, okay, well, I don't think you know how to drive, so we're going to help you drive. And in the pursuit of efficiency and gas mileage and all that, low key, one company that I've always kind of kept my eye on, which is weird, is Volvo cars are really subtle sleepers. Because you know how I mentioned earlier that I love sleeper cars. I don't know why people don't pay attention to that car. Like and I'm talking about their sedans. You know, they've had a lot of good platforms to build on, but it's because of the stigma of people thinking that it's a boring company. I'm like, do not think that it is. So, and I mean, they still have a lot of driver aids, they still have a lot of technology, but to me, I'm like, why would you think that a Volvo's not going to?
Even older Volvos, I think, like you said,
Turbo
just the
models,
brand.
yeah.
Yeah, like if you look at the old Volvo 240 wagons, like everyone thinks they're just this huge metal like boat.
Yeah.
But it's this lightweight car. You throw something in and it'll move.
Yeah,
And a
I've
lot
seen the
of-
videos of like they're just spanking people, like,
Yeah.
you know, on any kind of like straightaways. Like, it was a good chassis. So, but it's that station wagon stigma. So, but yeah, Volvo is one of those companies that I've kind of thought about. You know, why do people dismiss it, and why do people just not give it its respect? So, of course, I'm at an older stage in my life, but I like looking at. I think the sleeper, connotation is always something I love, and the old school, Grand National, the GNXs and the inline 6 turbo Grand Nationals.
Just saw one of those yesterday.
Every time I see one, I'm like, how are you even driving this without people mobbing you? Like, why would you?
They just don't know.
We
You
saw
don't see the
one
ball.
yesterday. It's the craziest thing. It was like the most beautiful one I've ever seen.
I don't know how he saw it. We were driving this parking lot, and there was like this Jeep walkie it, and he's like, "Dude, look at that car behind the Jeep." I was like, "How are you even seeing behind the Jeep? We haven't even."
It's got that peripheral.
I
vision,
know.
like, whoa. Did you hear it or see it?
No,
Both.
it wasn't even on. I don't think.
We
at
just
first.
saw it parked, and he pulled away, and you could kind
Yeah,
of hear
you
the
could
flutter.
hear
You could hear it.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
he drove off, you could hear it. But I just thought of that scene in Fast Four where Dom and Letty are sitting there doing a burnout. The tanker.
Just waiting. Yeah, just waiting.
Of course, I would think of that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that was an interesting era.
I like Grand Nationals. Believe it or not, I like them when they do that, resto mod. I think HREs they look beautiful on Grand Nationals. I don't like the factory offsets and everything it just I don't like it. I think HREs look really well with it. A good suspension, lowered, a decent interior rather than looking like a coffin for a pimp. Like it's just like
Yeah.
I'm like, bro, why all the velvet? Like get that out of here. I think with just a decent amount. That's the only car I would ever drive without a stereo. I'd be like, why would you need them? Like, they're just rip it out. Like there shouldn't be. I expect like an 8-track in there. Just like, all right, that's the only thing you're allowed. But popping the hood and just seeing like that big billet turbo, it's nasty.
Yeah.
Like Grand Nationals, it just look like a grandpa car that
They just rip.
Yeah.
It's like American Supra of like the 80s or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
And so that's kind of the sleeper mentality that I always loved saying like, don't dismiss that, dude. That thing will scare you. So
I wish I knew Lino when I had my Mach 1.
Oh, okay.
That car was exactly what you're describing. It's like, unless you looked underneath that car or under the hood, you wouldn't even know what the deal was.
super.
I loved that.
Yeah. Yeah, it just sneaks up on you kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And to the ones that know, like they know, they know. And then even now, new generations. So for me, I've never driven a Camaro. I never will. It's kind of like one of those things that I've never been in one. I've never driven one. Well, forgive me. I've been inside of one because, you sit and, when you go to the car shows and things like that, where, especially in SEMA, I'm like, I just love to bash on GM and like, this is cheap. This is like super stupid. Like I love bashing on GM, and I'm a Ford guy, but I still can't help myself. I'm like, this is crap. Never driven one, never will ever drive one. I gotta tell you though, when they discontinued the 99 SS, there's only one car in life that I will ever resent is that 99 SS. It doesn't get enough credit. Just that Camaro when they made that last generation, I don't remember what the chassis is.
Is that the F body?
I think, yeah, because they're letter grade denominated chassis, but I think it's one of the scariest cars that I could ever line up, and I hate that. I hate the fact that I get that sensation. I'm like, oh no, dude, I don't want that car. Like, it's like I could have like a completely dialed in 1,000 horsepower car, and I'd still, for whatever reason, think that 99 Camaro is got something in up its sleeve. So, but what's like the last time that you ever felt that you're like, this is not something I want to run into? Like on the street, you always kind of, but what's one car that you're like, nah, man, I'm not lining up?
I honestly probably a GTR, like an R35, cause
the whale.
Yeah, cause
in the Mach 1 or just overall?
Just with any other
car.
car.
Overall, cause like I did some pulls against one in my Mach 1 one time, and I was like, if I even have a chance, we have to do it on a roll. And luckily, I hung with him. But there was one night where, this was after I sold the Mach 1, I saw one that was really decked out, like souped up. Mm-hmm. And he hit it, and I swear it looked like he teleported. I was like, oh my God. I blinked, and he went from here to there. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I thought to myself, you know what? If I ran into one of those, like, chances are it's modded. I ain't gonna try. It's like, forget it. Those things are, unless I had like a turbo Porsche. That's
what
like,
I'm talking about. Yeah.
But now someone's going to jail. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's way too fast.
It's that sensation of knowing where you're like, I don't have a chance.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna try.
I think one of those GTRs, if I get a sense that they're souped up, I'm like, no, thank you.
On the street, like when you see, like, what are cars that you're like, I'm not even gonna touch that?
I think now a lot of modern cars, you just think about it. And if you know what the car is, you probably won't. Like, you see a Supra, like, they might have a tune, like, nope. you see like a Z06 Corvette, probably not.
Nope.
You hear a Honda and the turbo flutter, and you're like, maybe I probably shouldn't do that either. Like,
Yeah.
you just don't know.
I hate to say it, but Tesla, man, like
Tesla,
Model
yeah.
S. I hate to say it, but yeah, I'm not gonna lie. If I see like a Model S or something, especially if it's plaid or P100D, I'm like, oh,
Off the line. I know you're gonna get
yeah, at a
destroyed.
red light, no
Gone.
thanks. That's just a whole other game.
To me, I've said this about Teslas. They are not the fastest car. They are the quickest car.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because
Off the line.
if you're gonna say that, I'm like, let's go 400 miles. Let's see how this goes. And obviously they have to charge. They have to do all these things. But it is the quickest car I've ever seen move. It's so weird that your brain has to recalibrate how quick a piece of metal can move. Where you're like, whoa, just the torque. I mean, it's got to be thousands of foot-pounds of torque that it just. But yeah, it's in a whole different league. Going back to, I have like a weird obsession with only one GM car that provokes that. Don't touch it. It's the Z06, like, and I think it's not the latest generation. I do think that 01, like 2000 to 2001.
C5 Gen.
Yeah, the C5 chassis. When I love that the Z06 I remember vividly. They only have like one little grill, like it's a plastic little grill right at the bottom of the what is it called? The rocker panel on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only car that I've said like don't touch it. Like even the factory wheels, which look really outdated now. Normally I would be like, okay, put on like BBS LMs or put on some HREs or like no, don't touch. It's just such a weird thing where I'm like,
I think maybe I misunderstood what you're asking. What meaning like don't touch a car as in like it's like perfect the way it is, or as in like you wouldn't want to run it on the street?
well, both. Like which one that you wouldn't touch? Like cosmetically or just tune it or anything. You're just like I want to have an original off the factory showroom.
I can't think of one at the top of my head.
It's a hard, because a GNX obviously would be like $1 million car if you had one that had never been touched. But to me, that C5 generation of Z06s, and I'd get like obnoxious cherry red, like it just look at me red. They had a really beautiful blue too, kind of that deep marina blue. But that's one of the few that I'd cheat on a Chevrolet with the Z06 with that generation. And then they really just hyper jumped to the next chassis, and then the Z06 after that I was like, whoa. And it dominated for a long time. Like I think it dominated so much that we just got tired of knowing how good that car was. And like I said, I'll respect the fact that you didn't have to do a lot. I think the biggest problems they had was transcoolers. Like they had a lot of issues when you were pushing them. They got gassed, but once they either upgraded that or the cooling was the biggest problem that I think I was aware of. But then I'm like, still a bargain car. Like back then, $50,000 for that kind of car. And then they went into the Z eras where it's just like ZL1, ZR1s, and I'm like, dude, it went from a 50K, 60K total don't touch to supercar money.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? The moment you start paying $100+ for a Corvette, $100+ for a Mustang, $100+ for a Camaro, I'm like, where are we? Like,
Yeah, what happened?
What happened?
Yeah. I feel like those were the good old days, like I think the C6 Z06 for its time, in my opinion, was the best Corvette ever. I mean, that car, like there was always that stigma of, the Corvette they can't handle or this and that, but that car said, was enough. Watch this, look at all these times, like that car was very special.
And I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't talk about the other car that I would never want to touch on the street. The top for me still is the 99 SS, right? But the 03, 04 GTO,
Oh yeah.
I hate that.
I like those too.
Yeah, those are cool.
I hate that it really questions my ability as a driver, And again, I detest the body. I detest everything it stands for because it doesn't really do justice to. It doesn't pay homage to the real, the real legacy of the original GTOs. And I think when they started doing Challengers and Chargers, I always thought, I'm like, okay, they're gonna bring the GTO along, and Pontiac will finally get that, that. Think about it, GNX and GTO, and they didn't capitalize on that. Like,
I agree 100%. I remember when that car came out, and they just bought the design from Vauxhall or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, so the GTO is kind of arguably like the haymaker muscle car of all time.
Of all time.
And it's like you kind of miss that opportunity a little bit. And although it's still an awesome car, and in a weird way, it reminds me of the Supra a little bit. It's still an awesome car, but it's
I can see that.
It's like, I feel like instead of buying a design from somebody, it would have been cool if they had made it from the ground up themselves. But it's still a great car.
In-house, yeah. I didn't really know a lot about Australian, the what is it, Bathurst, or the all the races that they have out there. The Targa Tasmania was the other one that I started looking at videos of the Australians, and then in South Africa, like I'm like, if you're a car guy and you don't respect the fact that those dudes are making monster cars without too much flash, you aren't giving enough credit. So I really liked that's where I started understanding what GT3s were for, because I'd seen the Targa Tasmania, all those like rallies that are through little towns. It's the first time I'd seen cars do car stuff without being on a track. And obviously that comes with them running into light poles and going into like farm fields, but that's where I found my little, I was like, okay, I didn't know, I thought Porsches were pristine, and they were, the first time I got introduced to Porsche cars was actually a movie called No Man's Land. It's an 80s movie with Charlie Sheen. It's actually super good. It's cheesy, but it's underrated. As a car guy, I look back and it was way ahead of its time, because they focused on really what Porsche was at the time. And it was like the exclusiveness, but yet subtle elegance, and then power. Because they even had like the Porsche Gambala. They alluded to a lot of the different models because they were just stealing cars in the movie. But when I saw them in rally, I was like, oh, these things could be both, tarmac and loose. So, that's kind of where I was like, okay, I thought they were kind of trailer queens at first, and then really the 996 chassis was the first one that everybody hated it, but it's the first one I loved. Because they were like, oh, the headlamps look like fried eggs, and I'm like, whatever. I wasn't such a purist that I could be like, oh, of course, the headlamps. Like, how could I? But then the 997 comes out, and I'm like, oh, okay. Now we're talking. But the last air-cooled, I think 993s, or I'm not a historian, but from when they went air-cooled to water-cooled, it was a huge uproar, And then you get into the RSs and all that, and that's where I really, in the last 5 years, just fell in love with the company, and then all the stupid value that they provide. And I don't know, working on them I haven't done it yet, but I just have that feeling where I'm like, hey, as long as you have guidance and someone that can say like, hey, just look out for this. I don't think it's if you've worked on BMWs, it's like, okay, well, that's not easy, so I think it'll translate. And then someone will probably make fun of you and be like, dude, you have no idea. But I think the saying goes that the most expensive car is the oldest Mercedes, because it's gonna need some surgery.
Yeah, so need some help.
But yeah, so I think it's a next natural progression, but I'm getting wooed by that F80, and I like that it's been kind of proven over the last couple of years. It's not. It, they're like, oh well, the last real M3 was the what is it, the E92? What was it?
With that V8.
Yeah, with that V8. But then I'm like, oh great, let me know how those throttle bodies are doing. Yeah, let me know how all the issues that it's been known to have. Yeah, of course, when you rebuild anything and you put like really bulletproof parts, of course anything will be good. But I'm like, okay, what did it take to get there?
Mm-hmm.
So versus something that's, I love off the shelf, out of the showroom, and like just don't touch it.
Yeah,
It's kind of a weird thing. I like preserving things, but when you can plug in a flash and then just, I'm like, dude, that's like the best horsepower without any grease.
yeah.
So we're at that stage.
Yeah, pretty much. It's there's no denying like BMW. I mean, for very little effort and money, I mean,
Yeah.
more or less than almost any other car. Maybe Audi a little bit, but they're pretty remarkable. Doesn't take much to get a lot out of them.
No.
Times have changed for sure.
Yeah,
It's pretty scary.
the price per horsepower, dollar per horsepower, has changed a lot. And I think I remember watching back in the day, going back to Grand Nationals, there was like a chip mod that someone could buy that would not reflash. It was just swapping the actual microchip for the ECU, and then you would gain, I don't know, 20 more horsepower. Like, that was fancy for late 80s, but I'm like, dude, we're a long ways from that. And Gran Turismo ruined it for all of us because we thought that it was just like, oh yeah, reduce weight, add power, and then you would have
A fast car.
But it's like, no, there's a lot more. I think looking back, the problem I think I had with American cars is the parts were meant to have a 5-year lifespan. That's it. They get you on the comeback.
Yeah.
European cars were meant to be handed down. And that's the biggest problem I have with American cars. Where European cars is like, your son's going to inherit this. Your daughter's going to drive this 20 years later. As long as you keep up with it.
Yeah.
But I didn't understand that when people were like, oh, they're so expensive to do this and you can't work on them. No, that's not true. They have all these systems to tell you why you need to maintain them. Otherwise, it'll let you know once you break down. But having those systems, it's preventative, dude. It's not like, I hate limp mode when a car goes into limp mode because it's just like, why can't you trust the fact that I know that you need something, but just let me get home and then we'll figure it out. But
We're going to limit you to 25. Good luck.
yeah. So those are like, yeah, I don't like that, but I also know that it's to prevent you from further damaging the car. And so yeah, I don't know. The next chapter is just, I'm a little bit older. I think I'm ready for the 600 horsepower range. I think my skill, I'm there, but I'm sure the learning curve will be like 5-6 months before your brain can be like, okay, now you're ready for that. So, but what's your goal on, like, do you want street or do you want it pure time attack, or do you want to have 2 tunes?
Honestly, I don't really know what I'm trying to do with it. I think like the style of it is kind of where I'm getting that time attack vision. But I kind of want to learn to do it all. Like I want to be able to go fast on a straight line and beat on a Hellcat, but maybe slide around a little bit. Or if I want to take it to the track, try it around. Like
Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
Which is a lot to demand from a car. Like.
Which I'm not. Like it's just kind of like a fun car. I feel like all my other cars were something that I would put on parts and then make it something that I'm like, wow, that looks cool, and then I would hate driving it. Yeah. So I just want something that I can finally, like I put it together and I love the way it looks, but I can also drive it and enjoy it, and it's just a fun car.
Do you ever, would you ever drive a car that gives you all of those emotions, but when you turn around, when you park it and never look back, would you own it? Like, would you ever own a car you can't look back and say, wow?
No, I think I would have to have something that I'm like it gets me excited to look at. Like I also like the subtleness of cars. Like the Z is actually my first two-door car, and I've always enjoyed like having a four-door of some sort. But I think it has to have some kind of style that I enjoy. Like even if it's subtle, like it's just something that I put my own little twist on that I enjoy looking at.
Yeah. I remember you've had like such a huge range of, like, I feel like you've changed cars like you changed socks, dude. Like you just, like you don't have one rhyme or reason, but what's your method of like finding a car? Because you could be like, tomorrow you'd be like, dude, I have a Turbo Miata, or then the next car you'd be like, I have an Escalade. I can't figure you out.
You're 100% right. Honestly, man, my problem is, and Josh is probably sick and tired of me telling him, bro, what do you think of this? I'm thinking about that. And the next thing I know, I'm like way over here, like, oh, what do you think of that?
Squirrel.
And I just love everything. That's the problem, man. I can't, like, one day I'm like, dude, a 981 Boxster S.
Ooh.
Love that. But then the next week I'll be like, dude, CL1 1LE. And so honestly, man, I don't know. I just love everything, and I can't. I gotta try a little something here and something there, you know.
Is it always like? Do you have a requirement? Like, does it have to make you feel? Does it have to be? Is it a price requirement? Like, what's your categories?
So for me, I think the number one thing is like consciously, I know I can't buy a car I'm gonna get bored with. Like, I feel like it needs to scare me a little bit, you know. And it's like, I wish I could just go buy an Audi S3 and be cool with that. But I know after a week I'm gonna be shit bored of that car. Like, no chance. Like, forget it. And it's a great car. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. So it's got to be something manual, something crazy. Yeah. Or just something very light, like roadster-like, or, you know, either a lot of power and character, or very light and like a roadster, or something in between.
Yeah, it's kind of scary.
But yeah, man, I'm interested to see how his build is gonna pan out when you get your F80, and
now I'll run it.
Maybe I'll have like a Honda swapped Escalade. I don't know.
Like something that's completely Frankenstein.
Yeah, who knows? But yeah, man. So I wanted to bring up some car news. I know you're also kind of into finance and whatnot.
Yeah.
So one thing that's going on right now is the United Auto Workers strike. I don't know if you've heard about that.
Yeah, I've heard kind of.
But interesting enough that 16,000 cars haven't been made because of it, and $1.6 billion in economic damage. So being that I know you're kind of into finance, you kind of keep up with that stuff. I'm curious what you think, if perhaps that could trickle down to other manufacturers, or if it's going to be more or less just the big three U.S. automakers.
I think the supply and demand of cars. We saw, I think, the bubble that we just saw where everyone hoarded used cars, and then they just like, okay. So the fact that the manufacturers are clutching back artificially, right? Because they're not going to reproduce as much as they're accustomed to, like pumping it out, pump it out. I think what that does is it's actually maintaining prices higher. I think that's overall the effect, because when you restrict the supply, you're going to have people that are willing to pay $45,000, $50,000 a car. Like, when did paying $50,000 for a car become okay? Like, I thought 25 was okay, and 15 to 20 for like a kid in college. So I think it's on purpose. If you look at the big three, you know, GM, Ford, and
Stellantis.
Yeah. So they're gonna have benefit from it monetarily. People like us, all we're gonna see is just we're just gonna have a higher price. Yeah. And then on top of that, you add the restriction of chip manufacturers. So, we can't make cars because we don't have chips. I'm like, well, that's your problem. Like, why is that my problem? But it gets trickled down to the consumer. We pay, we ultimately pay the price. And then what I really think is a bigger problem is now, when did we get to a point where when you go buy a car and you tell them this is what I want, they're like, well, this is what I got.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, I tell you what I want, and then you, hey, let's get a build sheet and spec it out for you. Now they're like, yeah, this is all I got, or good luck.
Yeah.
And I'm like, when did that happen? So, I think it's artificial. It's really, the consumer is really the one that struggles. Obviously, 16,000 less units of anything out on the market, it's gonna put a dent. Plus, workers too. I mean, that's a huge, that's a huge gap.
And lost wages, things
Yeah,
like that.
I mean, that's obviously not good for the economy. But I think it's artificially maintaining prices at a obnoxiously high level. And when you get used to it and you add inflation to it, it's like, okay, well, that's the new norm. So that's why now I look at what's a bargain. There has to be a happy medium where performance and price intersect. And where is that? Like, what is the modern day, value sports car? And then how much does it cost to maintain it? And so you can't have your cake and eat it too. So I look at the future and I'm like, okay, at what point will a Honda Civic be 40K standard? And even now, when you look at try to spec
We're
out,
almost there.
There,
You
yeah,
get a Type R, and you're
Yeah.
looking 50 grand.
50
for a
grand.
second.
Tacomas where I'm like, whoa. When did this get to, base model 47 and then spec'd out to like 60? I'm like,
You have dealer markup on top of it,
right.
which is another issue in itself.
Speaking of Mustangs, if you want like a decently nice 5.0 right now, like the 2024,
Yeah.
I don't even want to know what that costs because it's just gonna make me feel like
And
even more broke than I already am.
And
So,
they've already
like,
had issues. Have you seen those videos?
Are they really?
Oh, really?
Where some of the guy, there was a guy who like all his lights turned on. He had like 10 miles on the
Oh my
gauge,
gosh.
and he couldn't get it to start. Like it would just, he would put in drive and it would just stall.
Really?
Yeah.
These
Fit and
Mustangs,
finish.
like you can get a $50,000-$60,000 like 5.0 just that's normal now.
Yeah, it's the new
$50,000.
normal.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I think, again, society is the one that condones it. I've said this. Something is only worth what someone else is willing to pay. So
That's a good point.
Yeah.
People keep buying it.
keep buying it.
So
So,
they keep. Oh, let's just roll with it.
yeah,
Same
you're
with the
gonna
markup. Yeah.
yeah, and then the markup of, I get when they had a low supply, they kind of had the privilege and they were in a position to give people that markup. But now I'm like, no, you're restricting it because it's beneficial to you. I also have to look at it from a share owner perspective. Like if you have a huge position on any of those companies, of course it's going to benefit you. But how long can it be sustained? At some point, something's got to give. And my fear is that once they realize that they're not willing to pay anymore, 45, 50K for a car, then they just make cars that are cheap just to be able to fit that 25, 30K market. Then I'm like, no, you were already making them good. So why are you going back? That's a fear of mine where I'm like, where are they going to start skimping out? Like, are we going to go back to rolling our own windows? Like, at what point are we taking 2 steps back and 1 step forward?
Yeah.
I don't know where that's
I
at.
think it's already started. Like if you look, I keep saying like the markup thing, but if you do research on what like a dealership was supposed to be, they essentially created this middleman between the automaker and the consumer because they were afraid of the control from the automaker.
Right.
And they're like, well, they can put the price of whatever they want, and so like they're like, to protect the consumer, we're gonna have someone who can like standardize the market. And now you have the dealerships doing exactly
doing
what
the
they
same
said they
thing.
want. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I've always wondered, like, I think Tesla's one of the only ones that did like direct to consumer, right? But then I'm like, yeah, why can't I just go to Ford.com or Chevrolet.com?
Well, now there's laws around the dealers. Like a lot of Tesla's still like a controversial thing to be able to put direct to consumer. And I'm sure that eventually we'll get there, but there'll be a big fight.
Yeah. Again, my thing is, first of all, you can't order anything else. Like you just can't order. I'm sure, obviously, you can. Uh, I think it's just not to a point where you're not giving the consumer that kind of custom. The whole point was to be able to customize. You know, when you go into a Ford dealership, you'd be able to customize a Mustang infinitely, right? Now that's kind of reserved more for a GT3 person, and then they're like, put your name on here, and then we'll let you know 2 years later whether or not you can get a spec'd out car. It's like so that leaves the used market, and I call it the abused market because anyone that has anything that was worth having is gonna have it already modified, or they did something, they got tired of it, and then they're like next. So
Yeah.
but
It's
yeah,
a weird world that we're in with cars right now. Very strange and concerning, and I'm just glad we grew up when we did, you know?
yeah,
So,
got to see the real stuff.
yeah. So, but yeah, man, so you last time we spoke, you had that analogy about the cars we compare to celebrities.
Yeah, yeah.
So I finally came up with my two. Josh, I hope you came prepared.
I did not. I'm sorry.
It's all right, we'll do it on the fly.
All right, so I got Sylvester Stallone's a Hemi Cuda.
Oh, what year though?
Like I think they were like late '60s.
Okay.
I want to say. Like the Challenger.
The
like,
Don Johnson Miami
Yeah.
Vice Cuda. All right.
like early '70s, late '60s.
Wow.
And you're gonna love this one. Miley Cyrus, Chrysler Crossfire.
Oh my God! I know exactly what that car is.
SRT6.
Why? Like, what is it?
I feel like because she was like this super goody good like Disney star.
Yeah, up and coming.
And
yeah.
like the Chrysler Crossfire is like an SOK.
That's all.
But then she kind of came out of her shell, became this weird thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a Chrysler,
Now it's
and now it's like, hey, that car actually has talent, but it's so strange.
so
You know what I
weird.
mean?
Yeah.
So that's
And it has like that first generation pop up spoiler in the
Yeah,
back.
the
Like,
weird
look at
spoiler.
me.
so yeah, man, that's my two.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah. So just think of a car. Well, first you'd have to think of a person, and then emulate the car. So.
Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, like just kind of, jog your memory and be like, okay. For when we were comparing celebrities, like at first it was women, but yeah, men can also emulate, But anything that when you look at something, you're like, that just reminds me of.
I feel like that's so difficult for me. If anything, I'll probably look at a car and think it looks like a dog or like.
Okay, so
yeah. So I don't. That's a hard comparison for me naturally, but I'll definitely think of one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It'll come to you. Yeah. There's some that I look at, and just the grill alone, I'm like, why is that like a puffer fish? Like, why is it so hideous? And then some, to me, when it comes to the most attractive car, like the car that I think has, in my opinion, in my personal experience, the car that I think is the most gorgeous car. If you want to call it pretty, gorgeous, attractive, sexy, whatever you want to call it. 550 Maranello,
That's a beautiful car.
That's one of the first, Ferraris that just had modern look with lineage, but it was long hooded. So it was very Daytona-esque.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just that beautiful long hood, and then the intake, and the color, that was like that blue silver color, immortalized in Bad Boys 2 when Will Smith drives that car. But to me, I've never seen another car that I look at and I'm like, that's an attractive car. Yeah, of course there are other ones, but that to me is the one that, and I hate the fact that those got down to like 80K.
Did they really?
Yeah,
Oh,
like
wow.
80, 90. Of course, super, high mileage, or I don't know. I don't even know what it costs to, service even just any of the fluids. It's probably like $2,000 just to do any of that. So, and then you got to go take it somewhere to do it. So, but yeah, that Maranello was the first one that I remember thinking to myself, like, that's hot.
That's a beautiful car. Car ages so well, still looks so good.
Still, yeah. There's some. So what's one car that when you look at it, you're like, it's seductive to you. It could be modern too. Like, there's like no car. Well, LFA is a perfect example, dude. Like,
I mean, God, I feel like so many cars appeal to me.
okay.
That, I mean, LFA is definitely one, and then, I don't know, I guess thinking back on like a car that would be seductive to me when I was like younger, would probably like the SLK AMG. Is it no, not SLK, the
CLK?
CLK.
No, what is the McLaren?
Oh, SLS or SLR?
The SLR.
McLaren,
The Mercedes.
Yeah, the McLaren Mercedes. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
What do you like about it? Like, what was the?
I think it was just like it was like a super long body, and it was smooth. It had like perfect, like that classic Mercedes like styling from that age. Like it had
silver.
and then it had the two bubble headlights, but
the side exhaust, the fins. Then
it's just subtle. Like we were all talking about. Like it's a subtle car. It's nothing crazy, and it had the elongated hood. And then I don't know what it is with the front end. It just looked like a venomous snake. It had like the way the nose came out. I don't know if you can see it in your head, but the nose had.
Oh, I could totally visualize it.
Yeah, it had like the pointed tip or the Mercedes badge. I don't know. Just that's probably the front end is probably my favorite part of that car.
The car that I saw, they started putting it in GT racing. Is the Cadillac CTS-V. When they did that first generation, mid 2000s, they put a body on it, and I'd never heard a Cadillac V8. It was still a North Star engine, I think. But when they went through that whole campaign of like, okay, we're not your grandpa's car anymore, I have to admit that it was the first time I looked at the car and thought, whoa, that's an older, mature woman right there. Like, what is going on? So they totally went from DeVille's and just, old cars, and Escalades had already kind of been played out, but then when they went into racing, I was like, whoa, so yeah, I had the same effect that's SLR.
Yeah.
McLaren, speaking of McLaren, obviously the GOAT's always going to be the F1, but when they came out with what is it, the MP4, I thought they were kind of going to go back to that, and it just never, it wasn't, it was too clean. It was too nerdy. It was too computer controlled, because that F1, I mean,
that was raw. Yeah.
That was just like, you had gold lined, engine bays just for heat deflection. Like, that was just the most insane. It's the GOAT. I mean, I don't think anyone will ever debate me on that. Like, what are they, like at 20 mil now? Like, it's just, it's insane. I've never even personally seen one. I thought by now at SEMA they would have had one, but the mid mounted. I've never seen a car where you're sitting dead center.
Yeah, and 3 seats in the car.
3 seats, like passenger 1, 2, like the Mexican seat belts, like stand back, bro. Like never in my life will I ever. I don't think any of us will ever see a car.
I have to give BMW credit, because like when we were talking about engines earlier, they like BMW has made the most legendary engines, like in McLaren F1, point B, like pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, I think that they've done really well with the design of them. They're always kind of ahead of their time, and they always have something that could be worked on, or they're like, oh, but that's such a, it's such a big issue. And the thing is, they had to sell it to the consumer. A regular person can go get it if you work just hard enough. What happened is the aftermarket really took it upon themselves to perfect things. So that's where I like that, okay, they'll never be perfect, but you can work on it, rather than, I've never heard anyone say like, oh, I opened up a W12 AMG engine. Oh, absolutely, I know how to work. I don't personally know anyone. I know a lot of people that have worked on BMW, like E39s, all the the 38s, all that. I mean, there's 2,000 threads, and pages of people telling you like, no, don't do this, do that. So same with JDM and like especially the Nissan stuff. I mean, you go in there asking them what kind of oil I should use, they'll just laugh at you. Like, dude, just go read. Like, just get caught up. Otherwise, go find go find out if it works for you. And yeah, I agree with you. I have to respect the fact that they don't get a lot of credit on reliability, but I think it's because people don't maintain. And that's where the failing comes, where I'm like, okay, a part has a life. If you exceed the life of the part, what else do you want?
Yeah.
Granted, if the part isn't built well or it's just, there's a defect, okay, well, that's different. But nowadays, like, things are so, there's so much more consistency in the manufacturing process. So, yeah, I like that but you have to be comfortable working on it and that hump to get over it. So, like, when you started working on yours, like, what was the biggest hurdle?
Starting, like, I feel like I have this goal in mind and I had no idea. I was like, how do I get there? And like, even starting with some of like the like just learning to what to figure out to prep to pull an engine.
Wow.
And so then pulling the engine, and then now it's like, how do I think I might be the third or fourth person to case swap a Z. There's no kits.
Okay, so it's new territory.
Yeah. I have like a custom subframe, I have custom engine mounts, I have everything. Like, it's
really?
Yeah.
So all the mounting points, everything is, you're transplanting something that isn't never.
No.
It's not really had any proven record.
Nope.
Wow. So you're putting a V8 in the back of a 911. Like, it's just
Pretty much, yeah. So.
But the risk and the reward, like,
I mean, no one will have it. There'll be like 4 people who have it in the U.S. that I know of. One of them was Hoonigan.
That's what I like.
Yep.
I love the sensation of knowing that it's historical. Like the first time I broke into SEMA, like everyone, that's a hard one to lead with. The first time I broke into SEMA,
it's like, where are we going?
Yeah, the first time I broke into SEMA is when I got to see the Ford booth and they had the car that won Le Mans. Okay. And I touched it. I'll admit it. I touched it. Real quick, real subtle, but I was like, you know what?
Like, was it like a poke?
It was just touch. I did it. That's the end of that. So, and it was,
They
it was
have
just
you on a database.
Yeah, I was like,
they're
like, sure, dirty ass fingerprint, but yeah, I like knowing history was made with that, and to me, I love being there when something, I saw that when that happened. Like the last time I got to see something that was pretty much historical, it was pretty much kind of by osmosis, but when Koenigsegg broke the land speed record for a factory vehicle, and that was at the time. I'm sure it's been broken by then. Don't quote me. But it was like 300 and something miles an hour, and it was on the way to Perron. And yeah, they had 4 Koenigsegg's there, and sure enough, the dude went flying, and you could hear it. Like, it was just that loud. So I like being in places where they're, my ultimate goal would be to go to Le Mans, watch the 24 hours. That's like bucket list. But F1 too, it's gonna come here. I guarantee you, none of us are gonna see it because it's just.
We'll see it on TV.
Yeah, we'll get it. But to go down there is like,
nope,
a couple $1,000 where I'm like,
probably not even. You're
15K like for that's any insane. Kind of suite. Yeah, but that what I wanted to do is to prove that the town is track worthy, and if people are willing to pay for it, hey, do it. but I don't want it to be a flash in the pan. They're like, oh, that sucked or that didn't go as well.
I hope
like,
not.
I'm rooting for it to be.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah, I hope it's like a normal
Mhm.
part of their circuit.
What's one race that you haven't seen that you've always wanted to see, like a bucket list race?
That's a good question.
I don't think it has to be a race specifically, but I think.
But being somewhere.
I definitely eventually have to visit like the Nürburgring, like just
Really?
one time. Yeah, it's just
Yeah, same.
like it's just always the racetrack that I've been on in every race game that I've played.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
You know.
That's a
The
bucket list
allure.
item.
Yeah.
The ring. Spa for me. I think Spa is another good one. And my goal is to go to Le Mans, just kind of be in the village there, go through the whole township. But I think Spa is another one. I think Australia is another one good too, to see their their rallies and things like that. Because I just kind of think you can't have one side of the spectrum without the other. Right?
Yeah.
And to never talk about some of the, I'll say this right now, I think the best drivers in the world are the Finns, and they're rally drivers. Like, convince me, like, prove me wrong. They are insane. Like, the way their brain calculates distance between trees, I just don't know how they do it. I've seen a lot of the video. I've never been a part of it because I know that's it's a lot. It's a huge danger, but I still think that they don't go as recognized as the majority of all the other car categories. But rally is one that I just feel I never got into it because I never had anyone around me that was into it. So, but to see one of those races, it'd be on my bucket list. Formula. I've been to NASCAR. For NASCAR, it's more of you're just waiting for something wrong. Like no one like gets happy when a good thing happens. Like, oh, a guy passed another guy. No, it's just like, when is the mayhem? When is the mayhem gonna happen? So I just feel like it's like a modern day car derby.
Yeah.
With no lethal, outcome.
Seemingly, yeah.
Yeah. So I think, hopefully the F1 goes well, and they learn from it. I would hope they learn from it, but it'd be nice to be able to say, like, hey, dude, this is a spot now. Just kind of some of the other, on the circuit, they've become like, dude, I know the drivers will be foaming at the mouth to come to this town. This is like their perfect, Instagram moment for them to do everything. Yeah. So, but yeah, there's, other than that, like, any one place that you'd be like, I want to be there when that happens.
I can't think of any. I think, like, more recently I've gotten into like drifting, and so maybe going to see like a Formula Drift event.
D1 event?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can't think of anything like historically where I'm like, wow, it'd be cool to have been at that race.
For me, the pinnacle is Cannonball. I want to do it. Before I leave this world, I want to be able to go to the Red Ball Garage in New York and drive back to LA, to the little marina in LA and just punch my ticket and to say I did it. I'm not doing it for the record of time or anything, but it's to say that I did it. As a kid, I remember the Cannonball Run was like the coveted underground, street race of all times. And then I think the Gumball just took that to 10 times the level, and then they're like hopping around continents, and I'm like, whoa, like,
I think Gumball is like that, but let's see how much money we can throw at it.
Yeah.
The absurdity, which I still respect that. It's pretty cool. I like that it was real. The person that did it for me, that started, was Alex Roy. I gotta give him credit. He had the same chassis M5 as mine. I think he just had a 2000 though, or a 99, and he did the Gumball. He did the Cannonball Run. At the time, they were just recording with basic GoPros and stuff, but that car can do it. It's subtle. It'll blend in.
That's what you want. So you can go as fast as you can.
Yeah, yeah. There's a couple of dudes that did it with. I think they even did it in a Mustang. Like they just turned into and I'm talking like a, I don't know, 05, 06 or something. They just turned it into a gas can, and I don't think that's fair, because if you're putting that amount of fuel, like a fuel cell with like 50 gallons or something, I'm like, okay.
That's not what they did with the fastest was an AMG. And they did exactly that.
Yeah. They turned it into like a Honda Accord. Just made it look real subtle, none of the badging, and
then put a fuel cell, and I think they had a team in there. They had one. They
Yeah.
had like a bunch of radar jammers and like
Spotter.
watching. Yeah.
I heard they did it like during the pandemic, so there was like no
No
traffic.
traffic,
So like now nobody else is gonna beat it because
No.
it'd have to be another pandemic or something.
and but going back to being there historically, that's one of those where, I'd be like, I was there,
Yeah.
Some of the other moments for me, it was meeting Carroll Shelby before he passed, like at SEMA. That was
Wow, that's
pretty
amazing.
cool. You wait for it to hit you, and then you're like, that's him. And he's surrounded by, people that are with him. But that was kind of one of those other moments too. Mario Andretti, I got to see, short guy. Chip Foose is still my, that's the GOAT for me. Shake every single time I see him, he's the most humble person. His son, kind of also the same. This last time I got to see him at his booth, he is just the Da Vinci of cars. He's just such a his mind, the way he designs, fabricates, gets all up in there. But wheels is really where his passion was, and I gotta respect that dude. He knows how to make wheels look decent. So, but yeah, I haven't gotten starstruck with car guys in a while, but I want to meet that gas monkey guy. What's his name? Rollins?
Rutledge or something?
Rollins. Yeah, the gas monkey guy. I think he's in Texas.
Oh.
I like him now because he has old school muscle, but then he likes the modern supercar stuff too.
Yeah.
So
Some of those shops are insane, man. So it's like art that's just occurring in this building,
yeah,
It's incredible.
I have a lot of good fabricators, and then people that are willing to push, not like the West Coast custom push, but the let's make this wild. People want to go see it rather than let's just slap a body kit on it and let's see how it goes. Like, it's got to be something that people go, whoa, why didn't we think of that before? So yeah, I'm looking forward to that guy.
It's pretty. There's so many, like, people out there that have been so influential with these cars. It's like being able to meet some of them, like you said, Carroll Shelby,
Yeah.
Andretti, like some of these guys. It's like when you get to meet them, it's like because you realize how they impacted the auto world.
Huge.
That's what's like makes it even more special.
Yeah. Peter Brock was the last one. I forgot to mention. I saw Peter Brock at Speed Vegas.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he pulled up with one of his Daytona chassis, and I knew who he was. Other people certainly knew who he was, but I went up to him and I was like, I bet I know more about this car than you do. And he just laughed. And he's like, I bet you do. I took a picture with him, made him chuckle, but to know that he was so influential in like the Daytona, he did the '67 Daytona, and then he worked with Carroll Shelby, like that whole era. I'm like, dude, why are you walking around without bodyguards? Like, how do you not? But he's such a humble person, and you could tell that money just didn't change who he was. He's still a car guy, and he was wiping his own car down. Like, it was just so
Amazing.
Awesome to see.
Never
him.
guess.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, you could be at a grocery store, and I'd be like, I'm not worthy. Like, he's such a living legend. But I like that, and he lives here. I'm just waiting to run into him again. But
Yeah.
cool
Have you met any influential car people?
Honestly, not really. I can't think of any like car celebrity that I've met. I think the closest I've been around was maybe like I went to Cars and Coffee and Sun King was there. There was that, and then I went to Fuel Fest and is it Tyrese Gibson? Is that and then Paul Walker, Cody Walker was there too.
His brother, yeah.
Nice.
I think that was a cool memory because at Fuel Fest they had a drift event that some of my friends were driving in, and there's a video somewhere out there with Tyrese standing on the wall, and someone's tapping the wall, and my friend is he gets real close to the wall, and Tyrese has to jump off.
Last second.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's cool.
Sounds like the hoonigan racing is more of your cup of tea. Like,
yeah, I think it's just fun. I think it's because it's more applicable to me. Like I've been to some of these events, they're grassroots that my friends are driving in, and I've been in their cars while they're driving and stuff like that. So
yeah, the Ken Block, R.I.P. Kind of changed the whole. I feel like that's kind of, cars were kind of stale for a while, and then he just is like. Drop 1,000 horsepower on a 66 chassis, and or with the Audi, he started with. You had the you had the ST or which one is it?
ST, yeah.
Okay. When he got sponsored by them, that's really when he just took off.
Really took off.
The first time I personally known about him was on Top Gear when he gave James May a ride. And he basically just like scared the crap out of him. He was on the airport. They just did like that whole obstacle course. I didn't know who he was. I knew that he'd kind of done extreme stuff like jumps, but I didn't realize the talent that he had for drifting and controlling a car. And after that, that's kind of where I got interested. And then watching. Him go to Mexico and just do all the obnoxious things that he would do. And
I think it just confirms like what you said, like rally drivers are like the most talented, and he just has that background.
Yeah. If there was one event that I would probably participate in, I don't think I could drive it, but I would like to co-pilot. It'd be one of those like the Baja 1000. Like, because I don't have the talent that they have. I do not like driving trucks off-road. I think a rock crawler would be more my cup of tea. But when we're talking like 80 plus miles out on the dirt, dude, you're one wrong bump and that's it. Like that is, you are flying. So I'd rather do rock crawling or that kind of, like I love watching G-Wagons crawl and mow, up in Utah. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. Slow, but still dangerous.
Yeah.
But watching the co-pilots, I feel like I'd be a legit co-pilot.
It's weird because I find it like the scariness the opposite. Like I feel like I could fly in the desert in a truck, but going rock climbing when they're like going up nearly vertical, like I couldn't do it. I'd be too scared.
Between the two, which one would you do?
I'm scared of both.
Yeah, you're like neither.
Yeah, I'm not used to like the rock crawling stuff and the Baja stuff. I'm like, I don't know. I think I kind of like the speed, So I think the off-roading would be more fun. But yeah, that whole world is like, I don't know anything about it. I don't know how to do it, and
I just respect it. That's all I do.
Exactly. And I think that those trucks are some of the most amazing vehicles. Like when you look at even like F1 cars, these Le Mans cars, but then you look at those $1 million trucks.
Trophy trucks are huge.
120 or whatever, maybe even faster.
Yeah.
And the wheels are going like this.
Oh, the suspension
going like this.
Yeah.
To me, that's up there with an F1 car.
Yeah.
Like seriously, it's incredible.
The level of stability, and then the level of guts to be able to send it. I'm like, that's why I said I there's a difference between having a roll cage and airbags and, fresh asphalt versus desert.
Yeah.
And I don't that's why I think it'd be that you can't predict the elements. At least on the road, you're expecting it to be flat. Sure, you're gonna have a pothole. Yeah, you're gonna have debris on the road, but you're out in the elements. So it's not my thing. But like I said, to be able to co-pilot would be, as long as you have someone that knows what they're doing. I feel like I would enhance the performance of the team from that standpoint, but not as a driver. I know my limitations, so but yeah. It's that other sport that I didn't have anyone around me to, point me in that direction. And I think you're only influenced by the people around you.
Right.
That's a great point. Yeah.
You limit yourself, and I think as I get older, I'm like, okay, well, why don't I go look? What's the worst that could happen?
That's true.
So, but I think that's why you having like this plethora of different choices in cars. I thought by now you'd be like, dude, Raptor. Like, I'm getting a Raptor tomorrow. I'm like, oh, okay, fine, that's Sam.
I'm all over the place, man. Don't know what I'm doing, but yeah, I'm not sure what my next car would be, but it's kind of a roll of the dice. We'll see.
We'll look forward to it.
But yeah, man, dude, this was awesome though. I'm really glad you could come on, dude.
Yeah.
So I got basically half of our podcast on the phone in HD, and then the video I ran out of memory, but all the audio is captured.
Oh, perfect.
So probably it'll be like, I basically what I do is I put the audio out on different podcast platforms, so people can listen on those, just the audio, but then on YouTube they can see our video.
Yeah.
We'll put like shots about what we're talking about. So. We're still figuring this thing out.
Dude,
but,
I just love the
we
fact that
captured
you've done
everything, just half of the visuals, but all the audio.
I wish you only captured audio. I'm like, why do people need to know what I look like?
Honestly, for that it's like for Instagram or TikTok or the shorts or YouTube,
Quick little
things
reels.
like that. But
successful podcasts, I think, have always been first what you say, and then the rest is
for sure
it'll be part of it. But yeah, dude, when he told me that he did it, I was like, are you serious? Like, you pulled the trigger. Like, none of us had ever thought of it. First of all, if more people were here, like Randy was here, we wouldn't get done.
Dude, that's one of the things I kick myself in the head is like that I didn't do it sooner, because Randy's like the first person I think. I'm like, damn, I would have loved to have Randy on here. You and Randy and Josh and.
Yeah, just to bounce off of each other.
Oh
my god, that dude. He is a rolling character.
Have you ever met Hassan?
I think I have. I don't remember what he drove, but I'm pretty sure I remember meeting him.
Well, I mean, I don't even know what he drives or something, but he
has
an
R32, which is just he's always been trying to get it going, but
yeah,
I don't know.
That was like his. I mean, I've known him, I've seen him with it one time, and then I'm like, hey, and I get it, life gets in your way, but
yeah.
Should we stop?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can stop this.